I suspect that this series didn't continue because of the question we would have every creator ask of their own channel. Is this something that I can do every week, 50 weeks out of the year, into perpetuity? It can be really easy to be cynical about YouTube, but it is an awesome site. You can find just about any kind of video content there, including kinds that you've never thought of, from people you've never heard about. It's true, if you're a little guy, you still have to compete with big media companies, but there's nobody who can tell you no, and if you know where to look, you can find a lot of really neat, interesting voices. Unfortunately, a lot of those neat, interesting voices are on channels that have stopped. YouTube is a vibrant place for a lot of really neat videos, and it's also an immense graveyard. For every channel that you follow up on regularly, there are several that don't upload at all. Some of this is natural. Some channels are really just like a repository for somebody's home movies. Once they upload those home movies, they're not gonna keep making regular uploads unless they were to have a new home movie to digitize, and most of that stuff is probably on a smartphone and being updated to the cloud. And some people just make videos as a hobby. Maybe they decided to take up another hobby. Maybe they lost some of their free time so they don't upload as frequently. Some people are not putting tremendous stakes in the life of their YouTube channel. And for those reasons, I don't typically spend a lot of time autopsying channels that have died. You can't really attribute a cause without talking to a person who worked on the channel, and it's hard to get in contact with people who have channels that have disappeared. That said, I think there's a tremendous amount to learn in the channels that aren't uploading. Typically, we like to look at successes and see if we can't isolate what made a channel work. But if you don't look at what didn't work, you don't necessarily know what to avoid. This is called survivorship bias, and everyone in our office is rolling their eyes right now because I've talked about this a fair bit, and it's not within the scope of this video. Today, I would like to take you through one of my favorite channels that didn't make it. It had a series that it started and never ever completed. In fact, it never got past part 1. Not because I want to kick a channel when it's down, mind you. I think there's a really, really important question that everyone needs to ask when they first start their channel, and I think this is a great example of why. So let's talk about Pinot Guy 321. Pinot Guy 321 is a pretty personal channel from somebody who wanted to upload guitar covers. That in and of itself isn't a particularly new concept, but stick with me here because it will go in some cool places. The first video was a cover medley of Paramore. Theoretically, there could have been videos on the channel beforehand that had since been deleted, but this shows up as the first video. If your first video gets over 20,000 views, you are doing something right. Second video was a guitar cover of the Pokemon battle theme. Again, not anything super duper stellar, but still above 20,000 views, which again, really good out of the gate. The third video is actually another Pokemon video, but this one's a little bit different. Rather than trying to just cover one song, they decided they were going to cover the entire game. Meaning that they captured footage, they started up a new file, and they're playing all the intro music, and they're going through the entire thing. Every time the song would change in game, they do a neat transition, and it feels like one uninterrupted music piece. And from there, it gets wild. Once they get into the first Pokemon battle, they're not just doing the guitar cover of the music, they're doing the guitar cover of the sound effects. So when a Pokemon cry happens, they're guitaring that. When an attack lands, they're doing the sound effects for that too. It's super cool. It actually hits on the idea of format fusions that I've talked about before. It's not just a gaming video, it's not just a music video, it's both. And it's combining them in a way that most people wouldn't think of, and it's super cool. This video has just under 100,000 views, and the channel sits at just under 10,000 subscribers, which is not very big. But for a channel with 3 videos, that's incredible. Especially in 2012 time, like, that's the kind of thing that you look at and you're like, oh man, this is riding a rocket. Unfortunately, that was the last video uploaded. They did not upload a part 2 or any other video after that. Theoretically, if they did, they deleted it, but full disclosure, I have gone back probably at least once a year to check and see if there's a part 2. And I am definitely not the only one either, because if you go on the video, a lot of the comments are like,
oh man, I'm still here in 2016 waiting for part 2.
Which, like, I get, because I'm also hoping for it in 2020, which, boy howdy, thinking about how I thought 2016 was a bad year. Anyway, but if a series isn't uploading, please don't pester the creators about it. And obviously I think about this video a lot because it's super duper cool, but I think the other reason I think about it is because it was working. This wasn't a case of like something that didn't take off. It had a lot of views really quickly on a channel that was pretty new. Granted, after you get past part 1 of most series, the views tend to drop over time, but this was in a pretty good place. So what do I think happened? And yes, this is speculation about what I think happened. I don't have first-hand knowledge. That said, I suspect that the answer is really simple. This would have been a tremendous amount of work. Holy cow. First off, let's think about all the sounds you'd have to create. Even in the Game Boy era, the Pokemon soundtrack was like at least 40 tracks, so you're going to have to compose those. In addition, there's 151 Pokemon, each with their own unique cry. You might not see all of them in the playthrough, but you have to account for the possibility. In addition to that, since they were doing the sound effects for attacks, there was something like 165 different attacks you could do in Pokemon, so you would need sound effects for all of those. And since the video is doing transitions between them, these things need to be kind of smooth. I imagine it's not a simple case of just recording all the music. You have to have a way for it to flow into each other as well. At minimum, that's going to add some composing difficulty. I'm not a good enough musician to know, but I suspect it's probably even harder than that. And that's just kind of music prep work and research. We also have to actually play the game, which can take a while, and capture the footage. And when you're playing a video game, to capture footage, you have to start asking questions like, what makes good footage? Am I taking too long in this? Am I doing it not very well? Because that gets very boring to watch very quickly. Then you have to edit all of this together. So let's say you've created a sound library of all the attacks that a Pokemon can do. When you see one in the video, you have to then sync up your guitar video because yes, they recorded also visually them playing the guitar. You have to sync all that together to your gameplay footage. I suspect that this series didn't continue because of the question we would have every creator ask of their own channel. Is this something that I can do every week, 50 weeks out of the year into perpetuity? Consistency is super important on the platform, and when you're starting anything new, you need to ask, is this something I can do consistently? As creators, we love to improve naturally, and also our audience kind of expects it of it. If I start off with a really awesome video, my audience is going to expect that they only ever get more awesome. Because of the expectations you and your audience are going to set for yourself, you want to be pretty sure about this. I'm super speculating here, but I imagine that Pinot Guy had a really amazing idea and put together a piece and then posted it and talked about it as part 1 because it was super exciting, and of course you would do more because it's awesome. And then they stared down part 2 and realized there isn't going to be just one battle in a typical episode, there's going to be lots, and they're going to involve different Pokemon and a lot of different soundtracks, and how do I get these things together? It would be a nightmare. It was never going to be easier than it was in part 1. That does actually raise a good question though. This was a really cool thing. So if you wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat with this inspiration for $1 million idea, what are you supposed to do? First off, experts seem to agree that you should write things down if you have the idea in the middle of the night because you might forget it. Secondly, ask yourself the question, is this something I can do weekly, 50 weeks out of the year, forever? If the answer is no, there is an alternative question that you might be able to ask yourself. What resources would it take to produce this thing 50 weeks a year into perpetuity? If you can't do it yourself or with your current resources, what kind of resources would it take? Do you need edit support? Do you need some technical knowledge? Is there something that could make this feasible? And is it available to you? If yes, great. Maybe you can find a person to collaborate with. If not, okay, maybe we put this idea on the back burner for a bit. A lot of people get really scared about their ideas being stolen. And yes, ideas can be stolen. Or alternatively, somebody else can have the idea and beat you to it. But if it's the kind of idea that's really hard to pull off because of resources, the good news is if you can't pull it off, there's a good chance that people like you can't pull it off either. I want to make a couple really important caveats here. First, if you're doing this as a hobby, just go for it. If you're not specifically trying to build an audience for popularity or income or for whatever reason, then you can just have fun with it. Secondly, I don't want to conflate this with the idea where some people go like, I have this really good idea, but I just don't think I'm ready or good enough yet, and I'm not ready to start it. And that's a completely different thing. You're not going to be able to get better unless you do a thing. So if you're just worried about skills, you have to start somewhere. However, if you have something going on that will make you physically unable to do the thing consistently, maybe hold off until you can. There's a difference between the anxiety of not feeling like you're ready to do a series and being physically unable to do a series. Okay, so you have a good idea for a series. What if you've never done anything like it? What if you don't know? And the answer here is pretty simple. You should do a trial run. Depending on your specific situation, you might even commit to not airing these, but try doing a run of 5 videos. If this is something that's completely new to you, this will tell you a lot of things. First, it's going to immediately give you a good baseline for how feasible it is to do this thing consistently. If it took me 2 months to film 5 videos, very unlikely I can make this a weekly thing. Okay, but what if it's on the cusp? What if you're kind of close to being able to do it weekly? Doing a trial run can help you find out where those pain points are and how you might speed up the process. And these are things that I can actually talk about practically, because in my first trial run of these, it took me forever to set up the camera and do all these things. And it was a big question of whether or not this is something that we could get to weekly. And if you become comfortable with the quality of the videos that you're doing in your dry run, they can also serve as a helpful backlog. Having a backlog is super helpful for addressing any emergencies that come up. If I can't film for some week, but I have 3 videos in reserve, we just release one of those and I find a time to make up the video later. And that's an important point. Maybe one of the things limiting you is something like you can't get equipment or space on a frequent basis, but if you can learn how to shoot videos in batch, maybe you can get to weekly even if you can't film weekly. Maybe you can film videos for 2 or 3 months all at once, who knows? That's what game shows do. Seriously, game shows will film like a ton of episodes a day, and then they can take just huge breaks of time. So when you want to start something new, be it a new channel or a new series on an existing channel, I hope you'll start asking these questions. Because this can be just as important as asking, is this right for my audience? Is this something that they'll want to see? Your ability to actually produce it matters. Some of you might be asking, do I really need to upload weekly? Broadly speaking, yes, weekly things tend to do better. If you can give your audience a consistent schedule that they can know, you can start to become a part of their appointment viewing, where they go, oh hey, it's Monday, today's the day that so-and-so uploads. If you can demonstrate to YouTube that people come back to your channel frequently and consistently, that's really helpful. Is it possible to succeed at bi-weekly or even monthly uploads? Sure, it is, but it becomes a lot harder. But if there's a way it could be done weekly and you're close to it, we generally would encourage trying to find a way to make that work on a more frequent basis. And there you have it, some questions that you should ask before you start any YouTube project. You'll run into so many less headaches if you start by asking those questions. Peanut Guy 321 has a really cool video and you should check it out. Just know it's probably not going to receive a part 2 anytime soon. And with that, I'll say thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like, and if you're new here, be sure to subscribe for more videos like this every week. I will see you next time.